DNR does make the point that the increased aquatic vegetation on the system will reduce some of the erosion. What I've seen, and I'd love to hear your opinions of this, is I don't see wave erosion as a big issue here. These lakes aren't that big, they're fairly well protected. I see ice damage as much more significant of an issue here. And so I don't think waves are an issue. So I think it's, while they talk about wave energy and all of that in their assessment, I think it's winter conditions that are much more damaging to these shorelines. One of the things they don't address is, as I said, that you've got 64% of the properties have some shore protection. People don't put in thousands of dollars worth of riprap just because they like the look of it. They do it because there's a problem. And one of the reasons there's a problem here, in addition, is that this is a flowage where we've got a dam. What happens in nature is, on a slope, we tend to be steeper at the top of the hill, and you see that right here on this hill. It's steeper up here, and then what happens is all the sediment deposits here at the bottom, and it kind of creates this circuitous curve here at the bottom. So this blue line represents probably where the lake was originally before the dam. And it's down here on this more flatter bottom. But today, the lake, because it's artificially raised, we're up here on this steeper slope. And so you've got sandy soils, you've got steeper slopes than most lakes in Wisconsin, and I think those two are significant factors that result in a lot more shoreline erosion up here. And again, that's why you've got, a lot of you have already put in shore protection, because there are serious erosion problems on this chain. And I think DNR hasn't addressed that issue, and I think it does need to be addressed, and I think we need to be honest that with higher winter lake levels, there will be increased shoreline erosion. And those of you who already have protection, a seawall, rock riprap, or a wood wall, you are probably going to see higher amount of maintenance because you will have the ice up against those shores. Ice works in two ways. One is it can shove in as it expands or as wind pushes it, so it acts like a bulldozer. Ice can also work the other way, where as it pulls away from the shore, it will drag things away with it. And so, again, there will likely be higher maintenance on the shorelines, and that needs to be addressed. Okay, let's talk about the administrative process, and then we'll let you guys ask questions and get you out of here. As I said earlier, DNR has the power to regulate this, but of course DNR is supposed to be our public servants. At least that's how I saw it when I was there. But they do have the authority. So they do need to go through procedures, though. And there is going to be a public hearing. So the Department of Natural Resources is scheduled for what they're calling informational hearings. These are formal terms in the law. And what they mean by an informational hearing is DNR is going to be gathering facts from the public before they make their final decision on this. There are also things called administrative hearings. Those are legal processes to challenge through basically the court type system. But so this is called an informational hearing on this draft operational order. Again, I mentioned earlier, the environmental assessment on this project is closed. So you can state you think it's inadequate, but you need to comment on the order. The hearing is going to be held here in this town hall, and it's going to be held on August 9th and 10th. It's a Friday and a Saturday. They're going to have 4 sessions. They're trying to accommodate the public as best they can. So the first session will be in the morning on August 9th on Friday from 9 till noon. There'll then be an afternoon session from 2 to 5, and then those will be repeated on Saturday. Now, I encourage everyone in this room to show up, regardless of what your opinions are. You need to have your opinion heard. Deciding which of these days to show up Think about your schedules, think about your neighbors. Don't try to all show up at, the Saturday morning hearing, because you'll fill the room and they're gonna run out of time and you won't be able to speak. So if you live here, my advice would be if you come Friday morning, try to leave maybe Saturday open for the people that are coming up for the weekend. But try to work that out. I think we're going to talk later. It would be a good idea maybe if people identified which session you may want to come to. The town has agreed to sort of keep track of that so that we can help identify which one of these sessions may be more crowded than others. So you don't end up coming here and sitting for 3 hours and then finding out they've closed it because they ran out of time. So let's try to coordinate that. Okay. All 4 sessions are going to be exactly the same. So if you go to one or the other, it's not going to matter. What DNR is going to do is at the beginning, they're going to provide an overview of the draft order, so they're going to make some type of short presentation, probably 20 minutes, half hour. And then the meeting will shift into the formal hearing. So again, there'll be this short presentation. They may allow questions during that period, but when the presentation period is done, questions will be over. And then the meeting will shift into the formal hearing process. And they need to have this fairly well organized and controlled so that it doesn't become a shouting match. So what they're going to do is they will accept oral comments. They will also accept written comments. Now during the comment, or what I call the testimony phase of the hearing, it's going to become very formal. Only one person can speak at a time. There will likely be someone from DNR who will act as a sergeant of arms. So if somebody's screaming from the back of the room, they're going to be asked to be quiet, and if they don't, they'll be escorted likely out of the room. I hope this won't be contentious, but when I was at the agency, there were some where we actually had wardens or town police, just to make sure, but hopefully that's not the case here. But beware, you'll need to fill out an appearance slip. And you do that right at the beginning. So you're going to need to give them your name and your address, and there may even be a box in there indicating whether you're for or against the proposed change. And then what will happen is they will assemble those, and then they will call you up to the microphone to make your comment. Now, it is very likely there will be a time limit on how long you can speak, and it's not atypical for that to be 3 to 5 minutes. And depending on who's the sergeant of arms for the hearing, I've seen some of them where they literally shut the microphone off at 3 minutes, whether you're done or not. Some will give you maybe an extra, minute or something to finish your comments, but be aware you're not going to be able to just ramble on. They will cut you off. And the reason for, and there's a logical reason for that, is that they want to make sure everybody has a chance to speak. Now, your comments need to be related to the proposed action, and so you've got to be very concise, and it's got to be related to this water level change. Don't bring up old, problems and history and things like that. First of all, you don't have enough time, and 2, they're going to ignore your comment unless it's very precise to the proposed order. Again, I said this is a very formal process. The meeting will likely be recorded, so the DNR has a record of this, but unlikely there will be a transcript. Any of you have been in a trial or something, there's a transcript where somebody types up the whole thing at the end. That's unlikely. DNR will just have the tapes. But what they will do is write up some type of summary. And so just be aware there's some ability for them to sort of interpret your comments. So the more concise you are, the better. So because of the limited time period to speak, I would recommend that you have a prepared statement. That you think about what you're going to say before you come up. Maybe even practice it at home before you come. And those of you who are, kind of nervous standing in front of a microphone, don't, in front of your friends. If you're a little nervous, write it out and read it. But don't let, standing in front of a crowd, negate your right to provide comments. And beware, if you don't want to get up in front of the microphone, that's fine too, because you can also submit written comments. Write it down, turn it in at the hearing, or you can mail it into DNR. Now, I personally like the idea of a written statement. Whenever I speak at a public hearing, I always have a written statement, because when I am done, I will read it, and then I'll always turn it in. I hand it to them as I leave. And that way I know it's in the record, and that somebody isn't going to take my narrative comments and sort of manipulate them. And so I encourage you to do that. It wasn't mentioned before, I also have a law degree, so I tend to be a stickler for that stuff. So it's not a bad idea to have it in both forms. And if you get cut off because you run out of time, it's not the end of the world. I still got it in writing, okay, here it is, make sure it's in the record. Now, remember, everybody has the right to speak. You do not have to own property on the chain to speak. In fact, there will probably be people here that don't own property. There'll be sportsmen groups and things like that will come in and likely speak before or against. This does not have to be your voting address. If you just have a parked, a summer home here, you still have the right to speak. If you're not a Wisconsin resident, you have the right to speak. So everyone can make a comment. And again, everyone has the right to speak. You're not limited to a single comment per household. A husband and wife, you can each get up and make a comment. You can oppose each other in your comments if you want to. Your son can come up and speak. One piece of advice is, if you have a lot of comments, is you and your spouse or your family, you may want to split them up so that everyone takes an issue, so that you make sure that all your issues get in that limited time frame, so that you don't get cut off trying to read off a dozen issues. Now, comments from the audience are not going to be allowed during that testimony phase. As I said, it's going to be very formal. You're going to walk up to a microphone, you're going to make your comment. Cheering from the audience, booing from the audience is not going to be allowed. They will cut that off. And if it gets unruly, as I said, they may ask certain people to leave. And it doesn't really help you at a hearing. They don't, if anything, it works against you. So be polite, be civil, those types of things. And I know you all will anyways, but I know at times emotions can get you. They get me 2 times where I want to clap or something when somebody says something I agree with, but try to minimize some of that. You can't ignore it all. But don't try to overspeak from the back of the room somebody who's trying to make a testimony. So DNR states that they're going to post the draft order. None of us has seen it. All we've seen is what's in the environmental assessment by July 25th. And it's supposed to be on their website. This link is on several of the local sites. I believe you can get to it through the towns, the Defense Fund site, the Manitowish Water Lake Association. So this is easy to find. Now, in addition to finding it online, there will be a copy at the Kohler Moore Library and at the Northland Lake Discovery Center. So if you want to go there and look at it, it'll be there also. Now, in addition to the hearing on the 9th and 10th of August, DNR will accept written comments by mail between July 26th and August 29th. And on the 29th, they say, somewhere later I got it, at the end of the working day, which means 4:30 in the afternoon, the comment period will be closed, and they'll accept no comments after that. So, there is an address. We'll get this to you, and maybe in your handout, of where you can mail written comments. There's also an email address that you can email your written comments to DNR. But I encourage all of you, regardless of what your position is, show up, speak your voice. If you don't, you're never going to get heard, and you're going to have to live with the consequences. Don't make the assumption that this is a done deal. You know, you can, this is your you know, other than legal action later, this is your only chance right now to be heard. So put those dates on your calendar, try to figure out what the best time is for you.
In your experience, how much of an impact have comments made from the total group?
It has varied.
What was the question?
The question was, from my experience, you know, how much can a hearing like this influence DNR? If they start receiving hundreds and possibly even thousands of comments that are shifted to one side or the other, they can't ignore that. Now, also be aware that, you know, you've got representatives, you know, at the legislature who will probably also show up just to listen. They may not, they may comment, but they also may just sit and or have a staff person here to listen to understand the political climate, because they may also try to influence DNR's decision. And as you're aware, the defense fund has already been, you know, in discussions with DNR too. So everything helps at this point. At this point, it's the only tool you have right now. After, you know, the 29th, your only tool, if you don't like the decision, is going to be legal action, which is time-consuming and expensive.
Before you take questions.
Yeah.
We do want to, are you finished?
I'm finished. That's it.
We do want to take about 2 minutes just to get up and stretch.